Hello, and welcome to the Everett campus of Washington State University. My name is Dallas Elfinson, an alumni from the class of 2019. Today, I'm here to give you a grand virtual tour of our building. So let's head inside and I'll show you around. The state-of-the-art WSU Everett campus was completed in 2017 and is both the youngest and smallest of 6 campuses in the WSU system. As a transfer-only university, the 4-story building is home to several hundred Evercougs. WSU Everett is one of 6 LEED Gold certified buildings in Everett for its advanced sustainability features, including solar panels, natural ventilation and lighting, radiant floor heating, rainwater harvesting, and rain gardens. Located on the first floor is the cafe, where you can pick up a coffee to go before your first class or grab a bite to eat with friends in the lobby. If you need a quieter place to study on the first floor, head into room 101, which has plenty of tabletop space and computers. Next to room 101 is our auditorium, which features lectures from industry experts and global business leaders, academic symposiums, and student forums. The Student Affairs Lobby is your home to find financial aid assistance, have admissions questions answered, make seminar room reservations, and find test accommodations and disability services. Our Student Affairs Department also manages the Cougar Food Pantry, which provides non-perishable food items to students in need. All WSU Everett students are welcome to access the food pantry by appointment. Nearly 1/3 of the building is made up of state-of-the-art engineering laboratories. On the first floor, you will find our mechanical engineering labs. These labs include the Boeing Innovation Studio, which is the most visible example of our largest and most personal partnership with the Boeing Company, the Mechatronics Lab, Braking Lab, and Thermal Fluids Lab that also boasts our wind tunnel. Making our way up to the second floor, you will find one of the most popular hubs in the building, the Student Success Center. Here you will find conference rooms, whiteboards, and computers, making it the perfect place to meet up to work on a project, engage in the Student Involvement Office, and student government. Next to the Student Success Center is the IT Help Desk. Students frequently visit here for assistance with computer and printing issues. A variety of general study areas and conference rooms are provided on each floor for student use. For those who need a much quieter study space, there is a designated quiet study area through the double doors in the staff wing on the second floor. On the north side of the second and third floors are general classrooms, computer labs, and active learning rooms where most of your classes will be held. On the fourth floor, students will find WSU Everett faculty and academic advisors in the office wing. In the classroom wing, you can explore our labs for the data analytics program, as well as the electrical and software engineering programs. These spaces include the power, hardware, software, and circuit labs. We also have a media lab for communication students, which has equipment available to check out for various projects. No matter your field of study or style of study, WSU Everett has the resources to help you succeed. For more information, visit our website or give us an email. Everett is Cougar Country.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final event of Career Week 2021 at Washington State University, Everett. It has been a busy week connecting our students and alumni around fast-growing and rewarding careers. I would like to introduce myself first. I am Dr. Subin Seo, Assistant Professor in the School of Hospitality Business Management in the Carson College of Business at WSU Everett. I would like to start by acknowledging that as a land-grant institution, WSU and its campuses and other locations are located on the homelands of Native people. Currently, there are 42 tribes, 35 of them are federally recognized. They share traditionally homelands and waterways in what is now Washington State. The university expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude towards their original and current caretakers of the region. And as an academic community, we acknowledge our responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with these tribes and Native people. So WSU pledges that these relationships will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. The Carson College of Business is very proud to co-host this evening's event. Our Hospitality Business Management program in Everett is one of our shining successes. 1/3 of our graduates have studied abroad, including Switzerland, Italy, France, and Spain. Our graduates go on to rewarding careers in the wine, hotel, and food service industries. And this year, we launched a bachelor's degree in business administration to meet the growing demands in Snohomish County for employees with a business background. To learn more about our business programs or the Everett campus, please visit our website at everett.wsu.edu. Women make up half of the American workforce, and yet we have had to fight for places of leadership in male-dominated professions like business and engineering. I am very proud to introduce a woman who for decades has carved out a place for herself in power engineering. Dr. Noel Schultz is the Edmund O. Schweitzer III Chair in Power Apparatus and Systems in the WSU School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, which is part of Voiland College of Engineering and Architecture. Her research has focused on power system modeling and analysis, smart grid applications, microgrids, renewable energy, and shipboard power systems. She is also WSU's First Lady. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Schultz.
Good evening. Thank you so much all for being here. Dr. So, thank you so much for that introduction. It's really an honor for me to be here. I'd like to really send a shout out to Chancellor Paul Petrie and the Everett family in Everett for all your successful activities for Career Week this week. And this is a great way to cap this, as we have an amazing and accomplished panel of women to talk to you about some of their experiences. Our students benefit a lot from our interactions with those that have been where they were before and they're like them, and they're having a chance to really learn more about what's happening and looking for their first professional job. Yesterday marked the end of Women's History Month, and it was an amazing month of different examples of how far we've come, but also the opportunities that are ahead. And it really is a great way for us to welcome and encourage and promote women across the WSU system and in our careers. Indeed, my career has been made possible through this progress that we've talked about through Women's History Month. You can talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experiences and my personal story, but I know you want to hear the panelists. So first, I'd like to say, I come from engineering education. My dad was an electrical engineer, and my mom was elementary school, both EEs, but in different areas. And in 3rd grade, I had a great chance to tour a manufacturing facility, and I really got interested in the math and science behind that. And so through high school, I enjoyed math and science, and I got interested in engineering, and my parents were very supportive. But I ran into challenges as we had less than 10% women in engineering. But my parents came up, my dad talked to me about tenacity. And that was a word I really took with me, stick-to-itiveness. And I think as we talk about COVID in the last year, resiliency is something we'll talk more about. And my mom said to make a difference. And that was something I really took to heart and something I wanted to do. And so I was fortunate through my programs, as an undergraduate and then going into graduate school to have support systems that were really important. And a couple of the support systems in my career that were important related to imposter syndrome, that voice that says, well, maybe you're not good enough. And having a support system of people to say you are good enough, think about your strengths, move forward with that. Also, dealing with failure was something I had to work on because I think it's really important how we deal with failure. I think it's more important than how we deal with success. And particularly for women in fields such as STEM, where it's male dominated, learning to deal with failure and to learn from that and use that for your next opportunity. The other thing that I've learned recently, I think is a great analogy, is in Sheryl Sandberg's book, she talks in Lean In, she talks about our careers as a jungle gym instead of a ladder. And I really think that's really important, particularly for women. As a ladder, you go up or down or fall off. A jungle gym, sometimes you go down to go up. And sometimes you learn new skills. And I think of your career as a jungle gym and the opportunities that are there. The last comment I want to make is for you to think about networks. And tonight, you're going to create and have a virtual network with all of us that are on, and this amazing group of panelists. But that network is really important. And I say you should have 3 networks. The first network is where you want to go and where we find mentors and people to help us give advice. The second important network is your peers, where you are, and finding ways to interact and have a peer network. And last, but certainly not least, is to give back and talk to the network of people that are coming behind you. So I hope you'll continue to look for those 3 networks and learn from these groups we have. Over the last couple of days, the Murrow Symposium the theme was the power of voice. And I think that's very important. And tonight you'll hear the power of voice from our amazing panelists. WSU continues to work to establish a welcoming and inclusive environment. And that's our top goal and is one of our metrics within our Drive to 25 strategic vision. We're working on progress in this goal. We're working on trying to make sure our enrollment is above the national average when it comes to both women and men having opportunities. And our women have surpassed our student body. We're also working to be inclusive, and over 30% of our students identify as Black, Indigenous, Latinx, or Asian. Our number of women outnumber our number of men, 51.9% compared to 48.1%. Our Dean of Voiland College of Engineering, Dean Mary Rizak, continues to work on programs for both women and also our students of color, as well as our first generation students that may not have mentors or support from those that have had the experiences in college and need that support network we continue to talk about. There's a lot more to be done to build an academic community that is equitable, welcoming, and just a place for all of us to come to work and learn at WSU. To do this work, we had 30 groups working on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across our university system. We started in 2019 with Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit and continue each semester with different activities to work. And we're working on trying to identify best practices and leverage our strengths. Our work building a transformative experience for all would not come to us without the support of many women, including the amazing women you'll meet tonight on this panel. I want to thank in particular two of our panelists who are WSU Regents and work with our WSU administration, Jeanette Ramos and Heather Redmond. Also, I'd like to thank Nana Larson for her leadership at PACCAR and for the time and energy on the WSU Everett Advisory Council. And Jessica Parsons, thank you for all you do keeping us and our students connected with Boeing, one of the largest employers of Cougs and a close partner to WSU Everett. As tennis great Serena Williams said, every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. We're strongest when we cheer each other on. And I encourage you to be stronger by encouraging the women around you and helping in their careers as well as helping each other. So tonight, let us share wisdom, stories, and most of all, cheer on each other. And now I'd like to turn it over to our moderator for the evening, Lynn Varner, who's Associate Vice Chancellor for Strategic Initiatives and Community Engagement. Lynn is a great administrator and is really helping us move forward. And we're fortunate to have her in the WSU system. Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Schultz. Yes, this is an evening to share wisdom, war stories, and reminders that we are all stronger together. And we've got a great panel to do that. So I want to call on them now. I want to welcome first Jeanette Ramos, who, as Dr. Schultz said, is a regent at WSU and a retiree after a long, successful career at Boeing, most recently as the Senior Vice President. Thank you. I want to welcome next Heather Redmond, co-founder and managing partner of Flying Fish Partners and also a WSU regent. Thank you, Heather. Next, Nona Larson, Director of Engineering, PACCAR Parts, and a member of the Washington State University Everett Advisory Council. Welcome, Nona. Jessica Parsons, Senior Manager, 737 Production, Engineering, Interiors, and Systems at the Boeing Company. Welcome, Jessica. And now, let us get started. This has been quite a year, to say the least. And I just wonder, it's taught us a lot of things, but what exactly, starting with you, Heather, has this year taught you about making decisions in an unpredictable world?
Oh gosh, I didn't think I was going to end up quoting Jeff Bezos right off the bat, but I do like his decision-making framework. He talks a lot about one-way doors and two-way doors. And one of the things that I try to do is make decisions quickly, especially when there is no more information to be gleaned. And I think it's very important to distinguish what is a two-way door versus a one-way door, and to not be overly cautious when it's a two-way door. You need to just make that decision, and you can always walk it back. I think Dr. Schultz was very eloquent in saying that we need to, sort of be unafraid of failure. And it's okay to walk through a door and say, whoops, wrong room, and turn around and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to where I was. And two-way doors allow you to do that. And I think COVID has made the uncertainty factor even greater. And if one were paralyzed by uncertainty, one would not make any decisions in this last 12-month period. And so recognizing that there are many decisions that you can make and you can unwind later is really significant and important.
Good advice. Nona, tell us what you've learned about making decisions in an unpredictable world.
Well, what I've learned this year is it is all about the people and keeping everybody connected and keeping everybody motivated and feeling safe. So I'm not sure if everybody knows what PACCAR is, but PACCAR is the parent company for a number of brands that you probably know. Kenworth and Peterbilt the best. So we do heavy truck. And our industry is up because everything is getting sent by truck and special delivery. And, we benefit from all the stuff Amazon delivers, and so we have had so much work, and it is a grind, and everybody is working so hard, and most of them remote, and working through all this uncertainty has been so hard on all of the people that do the day-to-day everything that keep our business going. And so the connection with the departments and the people that are just in the trenches it's been crucial. But that's been the biggest thing that we have been focused on. And miraculously, I've got a department where morale is high. Everybody's rolling. They are excited to come back in the office, and it's a good place.
Jessica, I imagine you're at a transportation company, a different kind of transportation, but I imagine this year has been similar for you. What have you learned about decision making?
First of all, more than anything, we're going to make mistakes. And I know that's pretty common for all of us to say in general. We're going to skin our knees, we're going to make mistakes. But this year really taught us about that resiliency, not only as a company, but as a business that is supporting the flying public, and how you have to be so resilient to communicate those hard messages, that honesty, and help everybody understand what it takes to be safe, and helping us look out for them and our employees at the same time. One thing that really spoke volumes to me is just the number of safety conversations we've had this year, not just as a company, but internally with our teams, and how many people that we know that are constantly flying and asking us questions if they realize that we work for the company. So just, again, that resiliency more than anything, and making sure that everybody's having those hard conversations about safety and protecting each other, our friends and our family. And that's the hardest thing that's going to be out there for us for some time now. But I look forward to returning to the office. Many of our employees do, and they're looking out for each other more and more every day. And I'm very proud of that.
I think resiliency is going to be one of the takeaways of the night. Jeanette, anything to add around decision-making in this crazy year and what it's taught you moving forward?
Sure. I think I come from a place where I'm a systems thinker, and learning and caring are really, I think, important dimensions to all the complexity and uncertainty. And so adapting to all of the context and changes around us, I think it's been really interesting because, you know, while we're learning how to respond, how to care for each other, we have to be empathetic to everyone's situation is so different. And the day-to-day blocking and tackling that we have to do versus, you know, caring for our friends and our family at a distance. Decision-making, for me, it's a balance of, you know, quickly addressing what's needed at hand, but thinking long-term as well as being empathetic. So learning and caring during this COVID time has been really my focus.
Thank you for that. So this year, America has been going through a racial reckoning. It's been painful at times, it's been cathartic at times, it's been important. One thing that's come out of it is that many corporate leaders are promising to diversify their workforces and provide more advancement opportunities for employees of color. Can you each talk about how you are advocating for change? And also the second part of that question, what advice do you have for women early in their careers, the women who are coming behind you, who want to become effective change agents for equity? And if we could start with Jessica and Nona, because you both work for large organizations, and then we'll shift to Heather and Jeanette.
Absolutely. This is a great topic, especially given the last year. And one of the first things I can say is not only a leader.
Jessica, you're muted.
Hey.
Sorry, I lost my connection there. Sorry, guys. Alrighty. So first thing I can say is not only a leader within the company, but as an employee, is that this last year has been revolutionary when it's come to this kind of conversation and just overall discussion about diversity. And I would have to say that the first thing that many of us worked together on was just having that hard conversation. Admittedly so, many of us were giving our own tributes about our past, our history, understanding in general kind of where each other came from, what we're aware of when it comes to the workplace and what we're recognizing, acknowledging. And it's diversity as a whole isn't just about, say, color of your skin, but it, again, we could have that gender conversation. We could have where you went to school. There's a lot of different aspects to it. And just, again, opening up that dialogue that diversity is a problem, that equality is a problem, is the first step. And it's the hardest step that many of us have had to take. And one of the big aspects to that we took in, and what I committed to, is that I was going to be more than open to the conversation, but that my team could reach out to me in different ways than they could before. Many of them have my personal cell phone number versus what they had before, because again, I'm different about privacy at this point, because if they need me in a different way. And not just, again, as their leader, but in many ways as just that other connection that they can reach out to. And I think that right there just opened up a different door and created another safe space that people could have that conversation. That was one of the first steps I took to help remove that barrier. And I've had many employees do the same.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Just what she said. I mean, my key in the department is safe spaces. You know, people being able to bring up questions or have awkward conversations or be able to say out loud how they're feeling about something somebody said or did, intentional or not, and being able to just bring all of that up so we can work through it. I'm a huge believer in, I love conflict. I love the kind of conflict that is constructive and moves us forward rather than burying, feelings and then letting everything fester. And I mean, I kind of want to give a little shout out to my company because they've made things really easy for us to have tools in order to help us with, increase diversity. I came out of a technical area where it was, some areas of diversity were well represented, other ones were absolutely not. And where I am now is more, I'm a director of engineering in a marketing department. So we have diversity of thought for sure. And they've given us a lot of tools, and I have all sorts of diversity in my department, which is fantastic. We have unconscious bias classes that are open to everybody, and they are very well received and attended. We have diversity councils that are global. So, we're in 44 countries. And so our diversity councils really cover everybody. And so we've got the Women's Association, we've got different associations that focus on different areas, but overwhelmingly the diversity councils, like they met this morning and had a global phone call on all the, what we can do on all of this stuff. And it really, it gives everybody the ability to build some rapport and, build rapport before you try and start having the hard conversations, because you really can't have these kind of conversations with people you don't trust. And so we're working through a lot of this. And I walked into our senior leadership meeting, my first day on this job. I've only been in this particular job for 14 months. And I walked into that meeting. It was 25% not white people on our senior leadership team. I had no idea. I was just like, this is fantastic. And so I really liked it. There were, it was a quarter women and a quarter, ethnic minorities too. So we're getting there, and we have enough representation now that we can have a lot of different opportunities to have those conversations.
Jeanette and Heather.
Okay, well, I'll chime in. I guess for me, I've grown up with this challenge my entire life. And it's interesting that it feels like a contemporary issue, even though it's been with us for so long. And it ebbs and flows in terms of the visibility and the community. And I don't know, I think it's really, for me, something that was so challenging growing up. And my parents made choices because of how welcoming communities were. I remember my mother was a physician, and we would go check certain cities out, and some cities were frankly viscerally more welcoming than others. And so for me, the diversity issue is a community issue. It's not just business and numbers and leadership teams and how we show up. It's about respect, inclusion, and this whole community conversation. How are we raising our communities with values that really invite diversity of thought? Because to Nona's point, creative tension is an outcome of diversity of thinking, and how powerful it is for all of us to come together and bring our best ideas and collaborate. And so the current tension is just, one, very sad, because it's been decades for me to live through it. Now, personally, what have I done? When I was, working in different areas, you just have to rise up to the conversation and deal with it directly, but again, respectfully, and not just invite people to the table. That's not sufficient. Being inclusive is inviting them to the conversation and then taking action together with collaboration. So that's how I would respond to that. Thanks, Lynn.
Yes, lots of good comments from everybody, and I agree with Jeanette that this is I wish that we could do more than one thing at once as a society. It seems like we're always jumping from thing to thing and then not, you know, keeping that long-term systemic effort up. So I'm hoping that maybe we have turned the page on that and can really take sustained and systematic approach to anti-racism work. So I am fortunate in that I am one of 3 founders of my own firm. And so that gives me a lot of agency in terms of how we're building our company. And I'm also fortunate in that venture capital, which is my industry, has a lot of room for improvement, as does technology in general, where we invest. And so there are a lot of, you know, relatively, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of ways that we can improve our ecosystem. So our firm has a program that we call Diversity 360, and we look at every aspect of what we do, from who invests in us down to who we invest in and who those folks hire, but also who do we hire as a vendor? You know, what people do we allow to co-invest in our transactions with us? Really, the full panoply. If you were to stand in a place, you know, hypothetically as your own company and look around you, up and down and to the side, you know, sort of who are you helping, and who are you allied with? So we do that. We also try to lead by example for the industry. It's a very white male dominated industry, technology investing. And so we try to show with our team, with the actions that we take. I think we're the only VC in town that has signed both anti-racism corporate pacts that have come out, one from Challenge Seattle and one from Washington Technology Industry Association. We were, you know, the first signatories with a few other big corporations on those pacts, even though we're a team of 10, which is typical for an investing firm. But there's a real responsibility, I think. I mean, my husband and I were talking the other night about films that you could watch from 20 years ago that you would just be horrified by, you know, in terms of the racism and the misogyny and the otherism, and just, you know, and not to mention, you know, the jokes about people with disabilities. And I mean, just every kind of discriminatory action that you could imagine that we would, you know, no longer think was funny 20 years ago, or the accepted norm. And that still is being magnified in technology, because we have things like artificial intelligence and machine learning that take all that data and then play it back, you know, in building models that will act independently going forward. So I think that the burden on us, and also the opportunity for us in the sector that we're in, is just almost infinite, which I find very motivating. I mean, it's a lot of the reason why I started the firm. But it did require me to go start my own thing, as opposed to you know, being in an environment where I never could have, by joining another team, I would have never ended up with a team that I have today, which is majority women and majority BIPOC. And that's just you know, a feature of being entrepreneurial, which is harder for women to do, you know, but it's incredibly rewarding if you're able to do it.
Thanks for that, Heather. I want to stay with this for a moment. One, because Jeanette, you have me really thinking. You are exactly right that inclusion isn't about inviting someone into the room. It's inviting us into the conversation. It's making space at the table. And so I wonder if we could give some advice to the Cougs coming behind us, who are early in their careers, who are thinking about, I want to be effective change agents, but at the same time, I want to stay employed. I want to balance the politics. Jessica, Nona, how do you step into a large company and advocate for change around equity and diversity, which is so important, but how do you also manage to I guess, balance maintaining your career? making sure that you're not labeled as someone who is a troublemaker, which I know a lot of young people worry about that.
I don't know that I have a really good answer for that one, because I did get labeled a troublemaker a couple times. I did recover from that. I salvaged that. I didn't go too far. But yeah, there's a fine balance about coming in and sitting, at the big table when you're just brand new to the industry and you're a young woman, or you especially, or a young person of color, and you come in and you sit down amongst the senior folks instead of taking the beginner spot, you want to call it, up against the wall and the second tier, right? It's a fine balance. And then you'll always, you hear advice like, make sure you speak up in a meeting to let people know you're there. Because if you don't speak up, why are you there? Well, if you have nothing really knowledgeable and confident to say, you can get yourself in trouble. So it's a very fine line. And I think you have to trust your instincts a little bit and get a mentor. Find somebody that you can have you help navigate your starting point, so you can get off to a good start. So I guess that's my biggest advice, is get a mentor that you can bounce things off of before you go public, if you want to say, and get yourself in trouble with the wrong people.
I'm glad Nona mentioned the mentoring part. That would be one of my first things that I would suggest to anybody right away, is identifying mentors that are, again, kind of like what Dr. Schultz said, they're there for your career path. They're there, again, for the conversations that are tough, that you feel safe to have those kinds of conversations. Other people that are there to give you that other opinion. Mentors are the first people that I would consider in these kinds of situations. But I'd also consider advocates. What I mean by an advocate is, in many of those cases, you're going to be walking in to a difficult situation or a difficult meeting, and you can have that side conversation with an advocate beforehand, and sometimes bring them with you, and have them there, because you guys have already had that conversation. More often than not, they're there to support you. Not necessarily, again, try to per se start a battle between both parties. It's just, again, because you probably are uncomfortable with bringing this topic up. They're there to support you as you're having that conversation, or bringing up those topics, because, again, sometimes they can be a little tougher. The other thing is finding those other safe spaces. There are groups at a lot of our companies. I've heard about other diversity and inclusion groups. There's other anonymous tip lines and things like that. We have something called Speak Up at our company. And it's there specifically so you can feel like you have a safe space to bring something up without retribution, like anything getting in trouble. Because there is a little bit of that fear that's still out there, bringing up those tough topics, bringing up those tough situations. So if finding a mentor is tough, and sometimes having advocates, there are definitely those anonymous tip lines in a lot of companies, or those other groups that you can join, where you can find those groups or those people that are there to support you through and through, where you can have those conversations and be supported along the way.
Great. So let's shift gears. Would each of you talk about the greatest challenge you had to overcome in your career and how you did it? And we'll start with you, Heather, and then go to Jeanette.
Oh, yeah, there's so many to choose from. I think maybe I'm generalizing a little bit, because I think this is a problem that a lot of women face, yet it's a, as we like to say, it's a high class problem to have. It's easy to decide that at some point you have done enough, and that you have worked hard enough, you have achieved enough, you have, that you don't have to keep going. And that, can particularly happen if you are fortunate enough to be in a financial situation where you can make a rational choice not to keep working. Technology has done that for a lot of families in our region, where you have dual income families, and the value of the salaries and the equity that are available in tech have allowed some women to make the choice to step out of the workforce. And these are often women who have achieved a lot in whatever time they've spent in their career and have very, very great potential to achieve a lot more. And I have children myself. I completely understand that decision, particularly as it relates to children. And I think COVID, obviously has been a time where a lot of women have made that decision, and sometimes without the financial security that you would hope you'd have to make that decision. But it's made that that circumstance a lot worse for a lot of women. So I had that, that point in my life too, where I slowed down pretty dramatically. I never stopped, but I slowed down pretty dramatically for a period of time when our daughter was young. And it was very, very hard for me to gear back up, and took a lot of fortunateness on my part, with the tools that I happen to have in my my backpack. So a lot of it was just the grace of good fortune, but also it took a lot of gumption and a lot of support from my family to step back fully into the ring and decide that I had a lot more still to do and a lot more potential. And what's more, that I had an obligation to use that full potential. So I think, one of the things that I frequently challenge other women on is, what would hold you back from achieving even more and being more of a lighthouse for other women, and not only women, but other people that face discrimination in the workplace, to keep going and to achieve more and to do more and to start your own thing or be the CEO, you name it. But really staying in the mainstream workforce and achieving everything that is your full potential. And in the process of doing that, getting over, some of what Dr. Schultz mentioned in terms of imposter syndrome and those artificial things that are holding you back. And so, if I had a flaw in life, I think it's that I didn't soon enough realize what I was capable of doing. And so I, probably could have done more sooner if I had realized that. And so I certainly would challenge the young Cougs in the audience to anything that they are planning is sort of like their ultimate goal, upgrade that like 2 steps, because they are probably underestimating themselves pretty dramatically. And I would say that for women who are now in a position to re-enter the workplace, upgrade whatever your goal is by a couple of steps, because you're probably underestimating yourself as well.
Thoughts, Jeanette?
Well, what's fun about this is we're all not scripted. And as I was listening to Heather, I was thinking to myself, she's describing me. And, throughout the COVID in the last year, we've heard and seen a lot of the data that women are exiting the workforce. And in my case, personally, it was just coincidental timing that my target retirement birthday occurred during this tumultuous, painful time of suffering for people around the world. And so I really resonate with what Heather was saying about, life doesn't end at certain points in time, that really the agility to embrace change and to transition to other roles is kind of where I am. And so after over 34 years at an awesome Boeing company, and kind of getting back to your question of what was my greatest challenge, I think it's this idea that being flexible to opportunities that come at hand, and not being so fixated on certain goals. I found myself at the Boeing company by accident, I'll just say, because I was on my way to medical school, and after 2 summers working there, I switched gears and had a blast. And for over 34 years, so fortunate to have been part of that team. And now the new chapter is Washington State University as a regent. And this is where, going back to your point earlier, Lynn, giving back to the people who really represent the future, who are emerging from our universities, our schools, our youth. That's where I get to invest my time now, and I'm really excited about that new chapter. And being agile is certainly something I would, advise to people coming up behind us.
Jessica, and then Nona, challenges you've had to overcome in your career.
I had a very unique one, to be honest. I worked on a very special project for some time, and I was being invited to go on a trip with the rest of the team, and another manager said no. They were not my manager. They were not affiliated with the project, but they said no, and they got other people to stop it. For me, that was tough, especially since I was the primary project manager. It was my first year in the company, and it was because of how long I'd been around, and it wasn't likely that I would be able to interface with the customer well enough. To me, I found that a challenge because it felt like no one was believing in me, and my team stood up for me. I had several of the other team members go and reach out, support, again, some of those advocates, great people, and they made it possible. I'd say that was one of my first challenges right away, is within your first year, having that feeling that someone didn't believe in me, but I definitely had a great team that stood up for me, and they made it possible. And I ended up being able to go, and I got to meet the customer, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
I was angry for you, so I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I had that happen once, and yeah, my team didn't stand up for me well enough. But it's like, I've been in the transportation industry for 33 years now, going on 34. And I started at Boeing, and times were different. 30 years ago, times were different. And I've always worked in a male-dominated area. I'm a chemical engineer by training. I love being in the, company of our first lady. And so, I've always been surrounded by guys, which it was fine, but because that I get along with men just fine. But yeah, you stand out. And the biggest, it's like everything that you can think of has happened, except for things that are truly egregious, right? But the biggest challenge I had was being underestimated. Everybody underestimated me. And Jessica, to your point, same thing. You come out of school, it's 23 years old, starting at Boeing, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're a sorority girl, so you must be an idiot." I'm like, well, no, I wasn't a sorority girl. Like, nothing against them, but it's just like they labeled me day one. And I get to get into the next question about, women that have an impact on you. But, I was befriended by one of the very, very smart, successful women in the area. And she's just like, don't let them do that to you. Be yourself, have confidence in yourself. But it's really hard when everybody around you is dismissing you and thinking just, you can't do anything. It's just, it wears on you, and you start kind of thinking you're going to believe it. Well, between this friend at work and my family, my friends that was like, you got this, I kind of weaponized it. That way I handled it was I turned it on everybody, because you get in a meeting and everybody underestimates you, and especially if you're working with suppliers, for example, they will say things they never should say. If they think you're the what used to be the secretary 30 years ago in the corner taking notes, they think they can say what they want to say in the room, but you're taking notes on what they're saying. They think you don't understand. And then when you write the scathing email that says what's really going on in their quality systems, because they said it in front of you, they don't underestimate you for long, right? And so that was my biggest single challenge, was really that systemic attitude of being underestimated. And as I've gotten older and had been more successful and built my own reputation, that hasn't been as much of an issue. But every once in a while, still, I'll go into a room and I will be dismissed because I'm female, and that's just something that I built up a tough skin about that, and people recognize, don't underestimate me because it doesn't go well.
Wow, thank you for that, Nona. And we've got just a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask 3 questions, a lightning round. So I want really short answers. The first one is to name one key lesson or piece of advice, each of you, from a woman who inspired, mentored, or sponsored you. And Nona, since you just spoke, we'll start with you and then go to Jessica, Jeanette, and Heather.
Well, that the woman that I mentioned in the Don't Let Them Underestimate You still stands out to me as the single individual. And to get ahead on the next question about how you can have impact, I'm talking about her 33 years later, when she did nothing but mentor me and support and be an advocate when needed, and just when it was quite subtle in what she did. But that kind of impact just lasts and it sets a base. So anytime you can do that for young women, or any minority, or somebody that's struggling as being the other in a group, it just, you have no idea how much that can make a difference.
Jessica?
For me, it's going to probably sound corny. It's my mom. And the reason I say that is because she was my biggest cheerleader. And she kept telling me over and over and over again, from the time I messed up my knee to everything else after that, because I lost my scholarship, actually. She said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So what's your next shot? And that's exactly what I did. That's how I ended up at WSU.
I love it.
Well, I share Jessica's thought there. My mother was a physician, but she went it about a different way. She had 4 children first, and I'm the oldest of 4, and then she finished medical school. And so I got to see my mom study and work really hard, deal with the academic pressure as well as the diversity pressure of being a pioneer in medicine in the early, 70s in a part of the world that wasn't very accepting. So for all of those reasons, my mom's courage, tenacity, focus on people and ethics was really an inspiration for me and my entire lifetime.
Heather.
I'm going to go with my daughter. I was really influenced by her when she was about 13 and was looking around at sort of the mothers of her peers and feeling like a lot of them had lost their way. And I was starting to ramp up my career pretty steadily, and she really reinforced that that was the right thing for me to be doing. I think about that all the time because it's hard when you've got kids at home to hit your career really hard, and she gave me the support to do that.
How do you, and staying with you, Heather, for a minute, how do you balance being supportive and being competitive with other women in the workplace? Is that a false dichotomy? I kind of feel like it is.
Yeah, I would say in my industry, there are so few women that I really don't ever have to be that competitive with other women. So maybe it's a luxury. I remember being at a tech conference and saying, there's no line for the women's bathroom. You get, you can have many stalls as you want because we have the whole bathroom to ourselves. So I find it pretty easy to be supportive of other women in my field. What does sometimes blow back on me is holding them to the same standard as men. Sometimes women will want you to cut them slack and just do them a solid because they're women. And I have an obligation to my investors to invest in the very best companies. And if a company that's run by a woman doesn't fit our thesis or doesn't make the grade, then we're not going to invest in it. And women can be hard on women who have to tell them no. And so sometimes that's just a tough part of the job. But I don't ever feel like I need to outcompete other women.
Mm-hmm. Jessica, what is the best advice for a woman trying to move from a senior non-management position into management? And this question, what actions show leaders that you're up for the next step. So what actually should they be doing? And Nona and Jeanette, feel free to chime in on this as well.
First thing I would tell anybody is first show interest and tell people you want it. First and foremost, just tell them you want it. This is what you want and what you're willing to do it. That's just the first step more than anything. And from there, asking them further, what steps do you also need to take? What are the requirements? What are the expectations? Who are some people I need to be looking up to as part of that process as some of those key people? And those are some of the first steps I would tell any of them.
Yeah, exactly what Jessica said. And then emulate the people that have the job you're looking for. So watch the people that have that job, the role, even if it's not exactly the one, something similar. See what they do that works, and look at other people in that role and see what they do that doesn't work, and make sure you're emulating the stuff that works. And understand that, of course, it's like just gonna, in the male dominated industry, actually, yeah, Jeanette too. Sometimes you got to put on the suit. Sometimes you have to, get more direct. Sometimes you have to meet people where they are and in the same style, and understand that you're not like losing yourself by putting on the suit, wearing the mask for a presentation or something, just, trying to pace somebody and pace the role so people can see you in a different light if you're stuck. See you in a different light and see that you can take on and go toe to toe with people. I mean, even if you're a shy person and you need to go toe to toe with people, you have to be able to show that you can do that. And I've had very prickly women working for me that say, I can't do that. They can't tell me how to dress. They can't tell me how to talk. They can't. It's like, so you're telling me your clothes are what define you, right? It's like, keep your, yourself, keep your own core higher self together. But no, you got to change your style in order to be seen in a different light. And so people can see you in those roles in their own heads. And you get a lot more opportunities, a lot more doors open, to Heather's point earlier.
Jeanette, what do you think about that? Is that good advice?
I'd say ditto to Jessica and Nona for, what they've already said. I would add maybe that be a team leader and a team player, and ensure you're focused on taking care of your team while delivering results and outcomes. And, all of these dimensions are required as you progress through your career. And yeah, I think in multiple dimensions all the time, and one of them is time. So create a vision for yourself where you want to be, and have that passion and purpose to get there, but bring people along and take care of people as you're delivering outcomes.
Great. So we're going to shift to the Q&A portion of the evening. And while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to start with a couple of questions that were sent in advance. We allowed registrants to, as they register, to send in questions. And this one, guys, really touched my heart. And so I really wanted to make sure that I got it in. And that is, how can a young professional woman handle inappropriate romantic advances from men in the workplace while maintaining a positive business relationship? And I just wanted to email the person right away and just tell her, because it just angers me that this still happens. But shall we start with you, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what, how you, number one, there is no right answer to this, because every woman needs to decide what is she prioritizing. And I don't want to condemn women for deciding to kind of, avoid and obfuscate and, kind of put things under the rug in order to save their careers, because sometimes that is what you do, and that there's, no blame for that. However, ideally, what you would do is use your social capital in your organization to put an end to that behavior, and not view it as being something that you need to, maintain a good relationship with this person over. And so you've got to assess, you know, what you want to do and how you want to balance those things. And this is when those mentors and advocates, you know, can really come in handy. But I think it's, you know, we are very quick to ask people to be heroic. And sometimes I think that's inappropriate because it is a decision that they have to make, and they may decide they want to live to fight another battle, and they want to climb that corporate ladder so they can, you know, then get rid of the guy. But it's absolutely unacceptable, and it ought to be something that people interview for, honestly, is to find organizations where that kind of behavior has already been rooted out.
Nona and Jessica, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Heather on the try and get into an organization where it's been rooted out already. But people are people, you know, you're going to get people that don't take a hint. You're going to get people that are just tone deaf to what you're saying. And if it's just a people issue, you know, it's somebody you're stuck around 8 to 10 hours a day, oftentimes. Yeah, it just gets awkward. And even if they eventually do take no for an answer, you're still sitting around somebody that's been dumped, you know, in their own brain. So yeah, there's not really, I don't really have a good answer for it, but the way Heather put it with the political capital, if you can get coworkers, people around you to just kind of help and do this. I've been in a few awkward situations myself. I was married before I started my career jobs, and even then it was some awkward stuff until people realized who my husband was, because he worked in the same building as me. That was the only thing that shut it down. So it was, yeah, it's just, it makes for so much awkwardness. And I guess the only thing I can say is just build as many positive relationships as you can, and just have, you know, have your group of friends around you. And that seems kind of lame, but it's tough.
So we have a question. The panelists have talked about making sure not to underestimate yourself. What advice would you all give on how to give yourself a boost when your confidence is feeling a bit lost or deflated in the workplace?
I guess I would take that one. Oh, sorry, Nona.
Oh, no, I was just saying, find your happy place.
I would agree. Finding your happy place and finding some of your passion points. One exercise I have my folks do when I kind of see something like that is we work on this thing called a sweet spot analysis. We worked on a couple of different things of understanding what it is that what their strengths are, and asking them to kind of write those out. And then also kind of going through what are their passions? What are they excited about? I'll admit, not everybody knows this. I have a theater background back at the school. And so that's one of my things I put on there. I enjoy other entertainment and the arts and things like that. Getting them to put those kinds of things on there, even if it's outside of work, is huge. And then trying to figure out what are those other key elements in the company. And you can help them find their niche. And then you can also find that other like quick boost of, hey, you actually have a strength here. Let's see how we can leverage that a little bit more. And then we try to leverage that into the next job, the next role, the next activity, whatever it may be. And sometimes boosting them up in those next meetings also. So that's one thing that I would encourage anybody is try to find your passion in it and get your passions and strengths out there so we can leverage them.
Jeanette?
Oh, I think Jessica said it really well. I mean, reflecting on your strengths and taking just an inventory of all the cool things that have happened to you, but being with your friends and your community and having those conversations, I think is really helpful. You're not alone, and just remember that, and you know, reach out to a friend.
Lynn, I have two practical things on that. One, I think, and this has certainly happened to me because I'm one of those people that replays my day. I'm sure I'll be replaying this panel tonight and saying, oh, why did I say that? That was so dumb. And, you know, and so oftentimes when you're not feeling good at the office, it's because you are beating yourself up. And I can't tell you how many times where I felt like I completely blew something. And then later on, somebody spontaneously says, wow, you were so great at such and such. And I'm like, what? I completely blew it. So number one, make sure you are not talking yourself down internally, and you're trying to like just let the day go, and not make too big a deal out of that comment that somebody made or that feeling that you had about your performance, because that is very, very common. And then the other thing I would say, and this is it got a couple of benefits to it, is I think women are so concerned about being competent in their main job that they don't make space to do some other career enhancing things outside of their job. It's so important to network. It's so important to be involved in a couple of other endeavors, whether those are in your industry or in your community, but doing some other things, not just your family, but some other things where you're around other adults and you get strokes from them that are outside of your company environment. That is a lifeline emotionally, but is also a big career enhancer, because that's a whole new network that you're now developing that will lead to your next job and your next promotion, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the other piece.
That is so true. To have other things other than your work that you are judging yourself by is so important, to have those other successes. So I guess I'm the only person tonight who gets in the car and plays Beyonce or Lizzo after a tough meeting, telling myself, you are a badass, no matter what happened there.
You're definitely not alone.
Yeah, I have a playlist of anthem songs on that topic.
Yes.
I do that on the way to meetings. On the way to meetings, I walk to the meeting and I listen to a few key songs along the way. So yeah, no, your music is good. Music's powerful.
It just changes your whole mood, I tell you. So I just want to remind our audience that we're in the Q&A portion. So please submit your questions in the Q&A or the chat. So tell me, what was something that you all learned about in your college years that set you apart now from your coworkers? One is at your Cougs, but what else? Something that you did during college that now, and Jessica, I think when I heard theater, I was thinking about this question, and you. So you may have already answered it, but Nona, Jeanette, Heather, anything come to mind?
Just resilience. I was in chemical engineering a long time ago. I was one of the only women, and you just have to learn to roll with it and get the job done, get the work done. And it was really tough in a couple of times, when you're pulling all-nighters and you're the only female around, and it gets really awkward and just, all that kind of stuff. You just got to learn to deal with it, because it's going to happen and you want to get through it. You deal with it.
Well, I'll give a shout out to the resident advisors. I was a resident advisor at Washington State University for 3.5 years, and it was a lot of learning. And building on Heather's point, I also want to emphasize that it's not just about the workplace that you're at. Reaching out and being part of the community is a great balancer. And so I would say that while going to school, being a resident advisor put me in the middle of a lot of sticky things, and I learned how to manage through challenges in different ways.
I think that being an RA, you ought to get a leadership certificate for that. I tell you. Heather, and then Jeanette, Jessica, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed college and I love school in general. So, but I would say I grew up in a really small town on the Oregon coast. And so my educational experiences, and this of course is what I hope for all of our Cougs, you finally realize that you can hang with people who are really smart and hardworking, and that you can be just as successful as they can, and you start finding things out about yourself, that you have these capabilities that you didn't realize. And I think that's really important. And I think that's a journey that for women in particular, education can really lay a foundation for future success, because it is an environment where women can really excel. And universities have been very proactive about making sure that there are supports for women in a lot of fields, and more so today than 30 years ago, obviously. So I particularly by the time I got to law school, it was just what I'd thought of as being my little tiny brain. I realized my little tiny brain could stand up, to all of these brains from much more qualified backgrounds than me. And, I hope that for all of our Cougs, that they will gain a lot of confidence in their own abilities through being on the big stage with, in a very big university, whether they're in Pullman or Everett. They are, they're on an even playing field with a lot of really smart people.
Yeah, I agree on the resilience one. I definitely learned about my capacity while I was at school. So not only balancing an engineering degree, I did mention the theater thing. I was going for my theater minor and I ran the costume closet and helped direct a few different things. But I was also in the marching band and into social and a service organization. So I balanced a lot. So I learned a lot about my capacity. So I'm able to leverage that more. So today I know when I'm getting to that point and when I can have a different conversation about, say, my delegation or what I might have to say no to for a little bit. And so that's one big thing I definitely get to carry with me every day.
Oh, okay. What qualities stand out to you all when you're interviewing candidates for positions and organizations? Because as you know, next month, our seniors will don their caps and gowns for commencement, and then they're going to be job hunting. So talk about the qualities you're going to be looking for. Oh,
my biggest one is intellectual curiosity.
Ah, yes.
That is the only time I have made very poor decisions on who I hired was people that I said, oh, it'll be all right, but they don't seem very curious. And it doesn't matter what the role is, if it's technical or not or whatever, they have to be self-motivated and from their own intrinsic, you can't teach that. You can teach anything else, but you can't coach, against, I call it the lazy mind, people that are just mentally lazy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fix that as a leader.
You agree, Jessica?
I absolutely do. That intellectual curiosity is huge. I'm always telling people, always ask questions. There's not a stupid question. The other thing, again, going back to kind of those passion points, bringing passion to the role and that enthusiasm too. I look for that in most of the conversations I have.
And Heather, you are interviewing people for a different reason, to decide whether you want to invest or you want to talk about that company to other investors. What are you looking for?
Well, it's funny, the curiosity thing is definitely at the top of my list because there's a lot of discovery when you're starting a company. But the other two things that we look for, and I know this term is overused, but grit. When people ask me, what do I look for in an entrepreneur? I usually say I look for an immigrant, and then I broaden that out to say an immigrant's attitude of, hey, I got to figure a bunch of stuff out because I made the decision to come to this place, and this place can be mental as well as physical. But you can be sort of a fish out of water and struggling to figure out your path, whether you're an immigrant or not. And I certainly think women and BIPOC folks share a lot of those characteristics just inherently, because we're always trying to weave our way through a different system. But the other thing that we look for is personal charisma. Because the ability to convince people to do the impossible, the ability to get people to quit their cushy jobs at Amazon and come work for next to nothing to try to build a dream, that takes a lot of personal charisma. The ability to raise capital takes a lot of personal charisma, and customers, take a lot of personal charisma. So the package is a pretty rare package when you come right down to it, which is why entrepreneurs don't grow on trees. But I do think that if you think back to the stereotype that a lot of women think of when they want to be successful in the workplace, they think about being competent, and we didn't mention that in the list of things that we just talked about. And so when you're thinking about what characteristics you want to define you, be that intellectual spark and have that charisma and that energy and that grit. If you can put that together, you can succeed at anything.
Wow. Jeanette, tell me, what was your why? That you had a long career, and when you retired, you were senior vice president. What was the why that kept you going when I'm sure there were times when you wanted to give up, stay home with your kids, travel the world, do something else? What kept you going?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. No, that I think I was curious and I wanted to learn every day, and I'm still the same person. Almost 35 years later, I was inspired by the people around me, the product, the manufacturing that it took to build the product. All of those elements were just inspiring, honestly, the entire journey. And, it's just been quite an adventure. And to some people, that title might not mean anything, but just to give you a little context, my career started sampling sanitary sewers, okay? And almost 34 years later, I was responsible at the executive council and elected officer of over 60,000 people. And so I think back on that journey, and I can't help but have nothing but gratitude for all of those opportunities. But to Heather's point, I'm not done. And there's so much more to do. My daughter is moving off to college, and I am going to be an empty nester, learning how to fly airplanes and just having fun, helping the community. I think that's where my headset is. And, to just answer your prior question, though, the things I look for in people too, besides curiosity and I love the grit and the charisma, because those are real things, I think, that help people through their journey. The other is, we get a lot of, I'll just say, emerging leaders that like to spout data and don't know how to connect the dots to context and translate it into insight. And so that's sort of a skill-based view of something that you could build competence around as well, because I think it's absolutely true. Competence and character help you build trust with the community around you.
Anyone want to add something to that, Nona?
Well, I guess I like interviewing today, I'm not really looking for charisma in some of the roles I've got. I've got analysts and data analysts and people that work, breaking down parts and doing drawings and all that. Don't need charisma at all. You probably don't want a lot of charisma, because a really charismatic person is going to get really, really unhappy really fast in those kind of roles. But they do need really solid communication skills. And so even if you're not charismatic, you still need to be able to get your point across and get buy-in for what you're recommending or your work, or just to represent yourself. So that's, I guess, the only thing I hadn't heard said. But yeah, grit is huge, because you never have enough time, money, people, whatever it is, you never have as much as you want to make life cushy, but you still have to get it done.
It sounds like that grit, that resiliency, that persistence is the why that keeps you going when you want to give up. Am I right, Jessica?
Oh, absolutely. More than anything, pushing yourself to say, yes, I can do it, and being able to show yourself what you can do. Always trying. Again, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay, but you're not going to know until you try it. You keep working hard. And I would say that resilience is a big part of it. And so if anybody was to try to, again, tell me I can't do something, or I felt like I was going to give up, probably likely turn on that cool playlist and give myself a good boost again and go after it and work hard.
Any thoughts, Heather? I kind of get your why. You love what you do. You are having a ball, but tell me more, because I think this questioner is thinking of how to stay motivated over time, day after day, month after month, year after year.
I think it has to be from something that's bigger than you. And so, you know, when I started the firm and when I do my work every day, the thing that I think is really twofold. One, I want our state and our region to live up to its full potential, and it needs people like me to do what I'm doing in order for that to happen. We just don't have enough organized venture capital in our region to fund all the people that really deserve to start their own companies and build something cool and big and create a lot of jobs for other folks. So that's number one. Number two is, you know, kind of the topic of this whole panel, which is making sure that women and other people that don't normally get a chance. And so from my point of view, you know, all of us, given all of our education and all of our access and the privilege that we've either built or were given, we have an obligation to just go as far and as fast as we can and make as big an impact as we can and provide that example, so that other people will say, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. Because you know, that's just worth a lot. And that probably keeps me going more than anything else, is that I get that kind of feedback all the time. People telling me that because I do what I do, they feel like they can do what they want to do. And that gives them the impetus to do that. And I just feel given all the advantages that I've had, it's just incumbent on me to be as big a lighthouse as I can be, to set that example for others. And that, you know, it can't be about money or even my own personal fun, because it's not always fun. And the money's not important at the end of the day. It has to be about something that is going to benefit society. And hopefully I'm not deluding myself. Hopefully, you know, I am doing some good, but that's really what you've got to find as your purpose.
I like that. Starting with Jessica, then going to Nona. What do you do outside of work to advance women in the community? Any volunteer?
That's a great question. Very great question. In a lot of different ways, I volunteer and mentor quite a few folks outside of the workplace in general, not only students, other aspiring professionals and other companies, just in general that have reached out to me in different ways. I've offered myself as a resource that has been open to and willing to help other groups. I've been part of different women organizations. Museum of Flight is a big one. Women in STEM in general, and community, just working with the community groups there and volunteering with some of those young ladies and gentlemen that have been really interested in STEM, not to mention you're going to show off some of the different aviation things that have existed in this world. So those are just a couple of them. But more so, again, I also try to encourage myself to learn every single day, so I can constantly bring some of those other resources that I've learned outside and bring them in and bring them into the workplace also, because the only way you're all going to get better is if you share the knowledge, share the wealth, share the encouragement, and getting them involved too.
Yep. So most of what I do is not like specific to women. I'm trying, I mean, my goal is to really help, you know, build that pipeline, especially in STEM areas for young women, and just by being an example, right? So going to schools, and we did STEM events for my old job, our diversity council did STEM events, and the idea is to go and show a group of diverse people to a classroom. And then, you know, we would come in, take a truck, you know, a semi truck, you know, and drive it up to the school. And kids could do that. We'd have, you know, little experiments and things. But we had, you know, people of color, people with all sorts of different accents, men, women, everything, to give the people, give the kids an idea that they could see themselves in the future in this way. And a couple of times we, you know, so they were just girl, you know, just women in there. like in middle school, it was a target for a while too, was doing like experiments and having sessions for girls that show that they can get into STEM environments, and math and science are not just for dorks, and, you know, trying to see themselves and recognizing that if they wanted to support themselves, they needed to get into some sort of a career and life that where they could make their own money and weren't dependent on other people, and getting that out of their head at that, you know, I think the crucial time of, you know, early teens, when they start worrying more about, you know, hairs, nails, makeup, and clothes, right, than they do their school. And so that's where I was targeting, was more in the younger set, trying to get some of that through, you know, working in elementary and middle school areas. And then of course I have a few people that I coach, and most of my son's 21, he's going to University of Washington, unfortunately, but his cohort, you know, his friends and their families in high school in particular, I just mentored and talked to and, you know, advocated for so many of those girls that were trying to get into sciences in particular, and or college, or, you know, taking them in to work and showing them what the labs are like in our building and things like that. And so I have a little bit of a small piece of the high school and college set, but more of my work was in the younger set.
We have just 1 minute remaining. Anything to add, Jeanette and Heather?
Yeah, I would add, I mean, what I do most of my work with women who are kind of my peers. And when I sit down with a woman who is a CEO, I always say, what can I do to help you be a CEO of a bigger company? And if I sit down with a woman who is a CMO or a COO, or, you know, somebody who's not a CEO, I say, what can we do to get you to be a CEO of a company? And I am just relentless on that, because I want them to know that I think of them that way. And a lot of them are doing that thing that I mentioned before of saying, I'm a CEO, wow, okay, done, I've done it. Or I'm a CMO, wow, done, I've done it. And I want to encourage them to go to the next level.
Love that. Jeanette, anything?
Yeah, I'll just add that, you know, for everyone on your journey at every level, be your authentic best and know yourself, be yourself. And what I mean by that is know your purpose, your passion, your values, your strengths, and have a vision for yourself. And, you know, be prepared to shift and take on opportunities or learn from failures along the way. Be agile.
This has been a wonderful evening. I have to tell you that it is good for me to be in the company of brilliant women and to listen and to share. I hope that our students got out of this intellectual curiosity, grit, to be fearless, but also get a mentor, get other people on your side so that you're not going out there and fighting the battles alone. I hope that when they look at all of us, they are inspired and they see what they can be. And to my panelists, please look in the chat, because you are getting mad kudos there, because you have been wonderful and brilliant. Thank you, Jeanette Ramos. Thank you, Heather Redmond, Nona Larson, Jessica Parsons. My thank you from WSU Everett. And everyone, please go on Twitter for any questions that were not answered. I will forward them to the panelists and we will post them on Twitter tomorrow. You can follow us at LK for Karen Varner on Twitter, or WSU Everett on Twitter. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thanks, Lynn. Great job.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Wow.
Thank you.